Welcome, welcome, Brian Clarke, the developer behind the very scary and excellent Mortuary Assistant,
Thank
which
you.
I've been playing. I know a lot of other people have been playing as well and really enjoying. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I was catching the tail end of everything before your stream ended to this point,
Yeah.
and I'd see again the elongated legs. Um, the field of view in the game does a lot to force perspective on that stuff, but the legs are also a little longer because I have a universal rig for all the bodies. It's the way that I'm able to have multiple. So I kind of have to work within the confines of that. And
Okay.
I try to get the proportions the best I can, but if I've got like one of the first ones I made was like a tall, skinny dude, and skinny grandma from the demo. So those two share a similar frame, and from there, it's kind of built from that. So there are adjustments, and as I make more bodies, there'll definitely be more variations. But still, I gotta stick within a certain amount, right?
I think that's fine. I think that's fair enough. When you say universal rig, for people like
Hmm.
myself who haven't got a clue
Oh
about
yeah,
this kind
sorry.
of term, no, it's fine. I'm just interested to know more. Tell us what that means.
So a rig is think of it like a skeleton that you put inside a 3D mesh, like of a character. So any of one of the bodies is a 3D mesh, right? And in that, it has to have a skeleton that you use for animation. So those are the bones that you'll move for whatever movements you end up doing, and that's called a rig. And so, in order to be able to have multiple bodies, I wanted to share that skeleton basically between all the different models. So
Gotcha.
that way I could do one set of animations and no matter what body it was, it would play those animations.
I see. And you've got this universal one, so that therefore means that there's that kind of longer, or it appears to be longer, even though it isn't.
I mean, some of them are
Yeah.
sure, probably, but there's some wiggle room there,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's something that right now I just added a new body, so I think there are 5 total. But the next like actual like body patch that I'm gonna be doing will hopefully have 5 more or even more than that. So we'll start to see a lot of extra variation in body shapes and stuff like that. Though they'll all basically be the same height because so many things require that to be the case. For again, I've got events where the body contorts in a certain way and they've got to fit on the gurney, or maybe they're standing in the window and they're looking through like the little porthole type windows in the door.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
those things I need to make sure those line up so that the haunting event is the same no matter which body you have. So that's why those things work that way.
That makes total sense. And it's just fascinating the amount of different things you have to think about. And obviously, people don't realize, I think, how much goes
Yeah, there's a
into
lot
it.
to it. There can
Um,
be.
so, I mean, take us through the journey of the mortuary assistant, because we were talking about in chat. Obviously, this game has been around in different forms for a while. So, I guess first of all, how did you come up with it, and then talk us through a little bit, how it progressed and what that was like.
So it started as a game jam for myself. I had mentioned earlier that I haven't streamed in a while, but I usually stream my development on Twitch, and it's usually like little prototype stuff and just messing around. I wanted to give myself a bit of a challenge, and I gave myself, I think it was a week, to make just something small. And so I sort of threw myself into this little box of like, I got to make a small environment and I got to make something creepy. So what's creepy? Dead bodies are creepy. Being in a room with a dead body is creepy. And so that's kind of where I came up with the embalming requires you to be in a room with a body and you can be in a small space, and it sort of worked for everything that I was aiming to do. And I ended up making this prototype with like 5 minutes of gameplay. I think you can still get it on itch, but it's you go in and you get a note from Raymond saying thank you for coming in. Just follow the steps on the clipboard, and all you're doing is going around and collecting some items and putting them on a little table. And then at the very end of that, you go to make a cut in the neck to go into the carotid artery, and that's when the body snaps awake, and this little speech thing happens. She disappears. She's in the hallway, banging her head on the wall, and sort of does the thriller dance as she breaks and then gets thrown into the wall. Um, so that's how that started. And then a while after that, I was working on my previous game, Our Secret Below, and I was doing a Kickstarter for it. And I wanted to give an example of the sort of work that I do because I didn't have a demo for it yet. Um, and so I was like, well, I've got this prototype sitting around, so I might as well just throw that out there and show what sort of things I like to do. So I put that out there and it ended up actually gaining quite a bit of traction. And a lot of major YouTubers played it and people really sort of got into the concept. And so it was this really like bittersweet thing where it was like, yay, everybody really likes this idea. Okay, cool. This should be my next project. I'm like, but I need to finish this one.
Oh.
So I had to like, I, I tried to make sure I didn't get distracted by the new hotness that everybody was interested in, which is difficult as a solo developer. You want to make something that you think is going to do well. And, I thought Our Secret Blow would do well as well. But I was also someone who doesn't want to just leave projects on the table if they have the potential to be good. So I finished that project first and then immediately got into Mortuary Assistant. And that's when I did full gameplay stuff and came to the demo and put the demo out. And I was fortunate enough for that to gain traction too. And then after that, obviously, came the full version. So that's how all that stuff sort of came to be. I didn't watch Autopsy of Jane Doe and decide to make a game about it,
Sure,
as
yeah.
some people claim. But I actually hadn't seen the movie until someone drew the connection. I saw it a bunch, and I was like, oh well, I guess I should probably watch this and figure out what the hubbub's about. And sure enough, I'm like, yeah, okay, I see it. Stormy night, dead body, weird, creepy building. Yeah, totally. Worst
And
things to be compared to.
yeah, I would say, yeah, fair enough. And what was the journey like as a indie dev when you are getting so much traction from it? Was it difficult to? I mean, I suppose you want it to influence you in a way because you want to hear people's feedback, but you've obviously got this vision for the game. How did you kind of go about navigating that?
Yeah, so I've gone through part of the reason the development took 2 years is I've had a number of different iterations of concepts for it of what I
Mm,
wanted to do, but I kept trying to make sure I didn't fall for what's called feature creep, which is you just keep adding new things,
yeah,
um, and just kind of build and build and build and build. I also didn't want to fall victim to the desire to just add content to make sure I meet a certain hour amount because there are people that put value in direct relation to time played. So I will constantly would go back and watch videos of people playing the prototype, of people playing the demo, and just really try to understand what it is people liked. I'd read the comments, I'd follow stuff on Twitter and try to really see what resonated with people. And so the prototype became this sort of petri dish for what I was going to do for the full game. And for the full game, for the demo, I tried to make sure I was just making the prototype plus, right?
right.
Just all the things that people wanted embalming, people wanted more spooky stuff. That's pretty straightforward. So I made the embalming system and really kind of built on those things. The demo came out and I saw the things that resonated with people again and tried to make sure that I steered towards that. So I ended up scrapping a lot of things that I'd put time into, but figured this isn't this isn't the core of what people like. And it's not necessarily something I need for the game to be what I want. It's already what I want. I'm just building on it now. And so that's kind of the approach that I took was this is one of the positive things about social media and massive amounts of content to consume is there was lots of stuff for me to look at to give me an idea of what people really wanted in the game. And I think it seems I've stuck to it well enough that people enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. David in the chat has a good question about what research did you do about the embalming process?
Oh,
Because it seems very realistic. I'm sure people have
uh,
wanted to know about this before, but
yeah.
let us know.
So I've done quite a bit. I actually have been asked if I used to do embalming, which I find
Okay.
very flattering
Yeah.
because I haven't. But
Okay.
My background is in video games. I was working in AAA for a while
Yeah.
before doing this stuff, but I basically watched every YouTube video I could, read every article I could. I read student documentation on tools and how they're used, and just the overall systems that are involved in the embalming process, not just nowadays, but kind of throughout the history of embalming. And that's why there's, if I don't know how many morticians comment on this stuff, have seen this stuff. Some have reached out to me and said sort of the same thing, that they like that it's realistic. But I have a decent mix of like old tech and new, and things are pretty abbreviated. Like, it takes hours to embalm a body,
Yeah.
and you do it in however long it takes in the game, right? So I had to kind of pick and choose out of that. But there was lots and lots of stuff that I tried to make sure I was staying accurate to, because I wanted familiarity in a way that people would see this and say, is this actually how this works? And if they search for it, yeah, they see that's how it works, and that's really what I wanted. So I was pretty driven to try to be as accurate as I possibly could, while letting it be a horror game first.
Yeah, because I guess that is, as you say, an interesting point in that there is obviously it's realistic, but then obviously it's very much not realistic because there's this whole supernatural element of it that hopefully morticians don't have to go through on a daily basis. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting balance.
What's what's funny is I was going through Steam community forums when the demo came out, and there were morticians in there. They had started a thread commenting on like which things were accurate or not accurate,
Okay.
and there was one of them had started with how there would never be a window because it was a privacy violation, and that's not 100% true, because the reference that I used of one of the prep rooms has a window in it, but that's besides the point. There was this sort of back and forth of like what's not correct and everything else, and no one mentioned the demon aspect, the possession aspect that apparently is right on the money, I guess.
They're like, yeah, sure. Of course, it's not supposed to be realistic in that sense because there is a huge
Yeah.
demon. Yeah, that's really funny. But I
Well,
guess
that's
that's
the
quite flattering.
line. Yeah, yeah, and it's the line you kind of walk, I guess,
Yeah.
when you're doing something that sort of borders simulator game, because obviously then people look for realism with it. But Mortuary Assistant is a horror game first, right? Like, I want to do spooky things. I have a story to tell. I've got certain design elements I want to carry through, and so that has to take a front seat. But because I'm trying to be so realistic with the embalming process, at least be as true to it as possible, it's going to make people criticize it, and that's just the way it is. But I think it's awesome that it is accurate enough that people can poke holes in it.
As you said, obviously it is a horror game. Are you a fan of horror games yourself? Do you play a lot, or was this more just you hit upon this idea and worked with it?
So I really like horror games. I've played a good amount. I would not call myself like a horror game enthusiast and like that's all I play, right? Like I enjoy a wide range of stuff, and really my inspiration for things comes from movies a lot. I'm a huge film guy. Like, I've always wanted to kind of work in that medium. I toyed with it a bit in back in college. Really enjoyed that stuff, but I still kind of take some of that to heart when I'm trying to do things in my games. Because if in really any of my games, I try to have some sort of filmic aspects where, with the storytelling or maybe the way something is set up, feels a little bit more cinematic. What I've tried to do in Mortuary Assistant is make the haunting events sort of feel discovered, which I was trying to sort of capture the same feeling you get when you're watching a movie and you see something the protagonist doesn't. And then there's the moment the thing happens and you're like, ah, the thing happened, right? And so that's kind of what I was aiming for. Um, Essentially, yeah. Basically, I wanted no night coming back to the mortuary to be the same. I wanted it to be sort of sub lore that you become seasoned in doing this stuff and you're just coming back to the mortuary and doing more of your regular work, which is
Yeah.
why there's the entire haunt system that runs all the haunting events. But the story events, there's I think 12 total pieces, and that's 3 per playthrough. And so each playthrough, you get different pieces until you've experienced them all, and then it recycles them. But those are chosen at random each time you begin a session. So your first play session will have different story events than the next person, then the next person, then the next person. You'll all eventually see all of them, but they're
Okay.
still different. And that was something that I really wanted for the game as a whole, which is why the other aspects are all very I mean, I use randomize loosely because there's actually a pretty big system behind it. But that's the reason those things work that way, is because I wanted something that people could get together and talk about,
Yeah.
and uh, and have like they've played the same game, they are in the same framework, so you can talk about it. But then these experiences are unique to your own playthrough, so it gives you something that you can actually kind of have a conversation about. And that's what I really wanted, was I wanted something that people could uh, really kind of get involved in more than just playing it. I wanted something, because it's a single player game.
Yeah.
I wanted something that still felt like you could be social with it. And I felt that that would come through in the experiences, and kind of sharing those things with whether it be on YouTube or just in a conversation or on Twitter or whatever. I really wanted something that sort of went outside of just a single player experience. And that was my hope anyway with the systems that I had built. And I think it's fun. Like
Yeah.
I get myself with it still all the
Oh,
time.
really?
Um, oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I know the haunting events that happen, but so much of it is the way it works, without getting too far down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
is an event is chosen at random, and then the haunt system looks at what the player is doing and basically just records everything you're doing and compares it to some requirements that that event that was chosen at random has. And if you meet those requirements, it'll play the event. If not, it throws it away for another time and chooses something
Oh.
else. And then when that happens, when you meet the conditions and it triggers, there's a set of subsystems. Usually, some of them are more straightforward than others, like creepy sounds and stuff. But most of the larger ones, there are subsystems that turn on that then look at like where you are in the mortuary, what direction you're facing, that sort of stuff. And that's where I'll have events that, you know, yeah, I've authored this event where the shadow guy shows up around the door, or the lady in white shows up around a door or
Yeah.
something. But if you're in the front room, the waiting room, it might be in the bathroom, or it might be in the hallway. Or if you're in the embalming room, it might be in the hallway that side, or it could be outside the window, or it could be down the double doors at the end of it all. All right. So I don't actually know where these things are going to be picked, because I don't know when an event is going to fire. I don't know which event is chosen, and I don't know what happens within it once it fires to make that happen. So it catches me off guard all the time. Eventually you kind of get used to things because I've been working on it for 2 years, but
Yeah.
it still gets me.
That's crazy. I mean, I can't think of another game that's like that, really. Certainly in the horror sense. I don't know. Could you give us an example, maybe, of like some, a random event or something that happens, and what you would need to have happen, just so we can kind of
Sure.
see how it all works.
Sure. So for going in the other direction a bit, player like reactionary to the player, we go with the grandma event, if you've seen it, where
Yeah.
she's outside the window and she's like, why don't you love your grandma? So if you choose to stay in the room, she'll keep talking eventually, and then there's a bit of a jump, and she disappears, and it kind of warps back to normal. But if you choose to leave and go down one of the hallways, you get frozen in place, and she comes walking out of the hall, and there's a whole other event that plays there. And you can go down either hallway and that event will play. So I tried to make sure that there are reactionary events to what the player does. And there's a number of events that have that, where I do something to lure you to a location. And then once you're there, if you turn around, something's there. And then
Yeah.
there's a whole other, like the actual event will play where something creepy happens. But as far as the choosing things and an event firing up. Let me see if I can think of one. There's yeah. Okay. So there's a shadow event, Shadow Man event, where Rebecca's voice is playing and is calling to you, telling you to, hey, come over here, come check this out. So the disembodied voice thing. And then when you look, you see that the Shadow Man's there and the voice is coming from it. That can happen basically where you are. It will, like, say I'm in the hallway between the waiting room and the embalming room. The system will look and say, okay, I don't know where the player's going. So I've got to choose randomly between these two. I don't know. I could go further and see which direction they're facing and heading, but that's some calculation that's not really necessary. I choose one at random, and it'll either be somewhere in the waiting room, or it'll be in the bathroom, or it could be in the embalming room behind you. And you may miss it. That's part of the risk
Yeah.
that I had to be willing to take. Is I had to make, right now there's over 100 events I think that can play, and I had to be willing for any one person to miss most of them. That's how I think they end up feeling natural. Um, but let's say the one in the bathroom triggers and you're walking out there to return the paperwork after doing the body inspection stuff. Once you get into the waiting room, you'll start hearing the voice call. And if you go around the corner, you'll see the shadow guy there. Now you could leave it alone. You can ignore it and just go back to what you're doing, and eventually it'll go away.
Just be like, oh, well, never
But
mind.
yeah, but I've tried to give secondary reactions to things for what the player might decide to do, which a lot of times is like rushing at it or something like that. So if you go into the bathroom and go up to it, it actually poofs out, and you're just there by yourself. But if you turn around, there's a dead body there, standing behind you. So you turn around, the dead body's there, the lights go out, and then in that, there's another random roll that happens on whether or not you're going to have the lights click back on and get a jump moment and then get teleported out, or the lights will just come on and be done, so that the tension raises and then keeps you there, right? So that's where the game sort of makes that decision on its own. Now, if that same thing happens in the double hallway off of the embalming room going to cold storage, the same event plays out, but it's tailored to that spot. So you go there, it'll teleport out of the way, lights go out. Same thing will happen where the dead body's in there somewhere, and the event unfolds in the same way. But it's that ability for it to happen wherever you are, and the fact that you can ignore it, the fact that it can react in certain ways. I think is what it took most of the development time, but I think it's part of what gives it a pretty fun aspect when people experience them.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. Congratulations on doing that. That's like a great. I mean, the fact
Thanks. Yeah, it's
yeah.
weird, a weird system to make.
No, it's really clever though, and I think that genuinely is what makes it such an interesting game. Even though it's fairly short each playthrough, you just don't know what you're going to get. And really, really sort of clever way of doing it. David's also asked in the chat about obviously there's when it first came out, there were a couple of bugs here and there on some of the live streams. Obviously, exhaustively testing it must be difficult as a single developer. So, how do you deal with that when you see it? Do you find it frustrating or a challenge? I think most people have been fine with it because obviously accepting that there's going to be little things. It's not been game breaking stuff, but yeah, a good question.
Yeah, people have been very kind, I feel, and very lenient. For me, it's heart wrenching because I hate seeing someone play the game and then they're in it, and then a bug happens that takes them out of the moment, which isn't as bad, but then somewhere they've got to go back to the menu or something. And you know, it's an indie game. People expect that stuff. It's not a $60 game. And again, it's made by just me, so I understand there's leniency there, but at the same time, I come from a perspective of, you've spent your money to play this game. It should be as smoothly functioning as possible. So what usually ends up happening is I get a little bit of anxiety, and then I jump into Unity and I start trying to hunt down the problem and fix it as quickly as possible. And that's why I think a lot of people saw a string of patches come out in
Yeah.
the weeks after launch, and I'm still doing them. I've actually have a patch that's going to go out either today or tomorrow that fixes a number of other bugs. But yeah, it can be like trying to recreate those things can be really difficult. DreadXP, my publisher, has a group of testers, but it's like two people
Yeah.
that, they're a small publisher, right? And I love them for that reason, but they also don't have a team of 50 people running into something over and over again, right? So, I'll play something and not have an issue. They'll play something and be like, I don't have this issue. And so I do what I can to try and fix the problem and say, all right, well, I'm looking at the code. It looks like this could be something that could trip up, so I'll fix this anyway. It works for me regardless, and it works for me now after this fix. Hopefully that fixes it for them too. And a lot of times I've been fortunate and it does, but sometimes I got to go back and fix it, and that's just the nature of it. Now, with the game launching, and I had to leave to go on a trip to visit some family for a week. So there's a guy in my Discord who I've known for a while, very skilled programmer. I actually hired him to look at things for the week that I was gone, so that there would still be bug fixes available for people once I came back. Uh, so now I've sort of gone into a little bit of hiring freelancers
Yeah.
to help out, but it's this one guy, and he's done fixes twice now. So I'm still doing basically everything myself. Like I don't have you know Steam takes a while to cut any sort of check, and it goes to my publisher first. So I don't have huge funds to hire people right now anyway. So I still have to try to do everything myself the best that I can. And, I just am very thankful that people are lenient and forgiving with the bugs that they do encounter.
Well, I think it's because it's a great game, so I think people are willing to sort of continue because they enjoy it. So yeah, yeah. I was going to say as well, in terms of you talking about sort of being on your own quite a lot. Do you enjoy that aspect? Would you ever want to have a bigger team, or do you actually quite like
Um,
having full control?
So I really like where I'm at right now. Now, I had alluded to earlier that I had worked in video games for a while. I've been working in AAA for 13 years, so I'm used to working with big teams. I've been in management roles where I've had to manage teams of varying sizes. So it's not something that's foreign to me, and
Hmm.
I'm not against the idea of having a team. Um, but that's also a very different job. Like I'm no longer being creative. Like, yeah, I could still be in the creative director capacity, I guess, where I'm driving all the major beats and making sure that the story is what it is and it feels a certain way, and that could be fine. But right now, there's really something pretty special to me about being able to just kind of jump in and do every aspect and getting it to be the way I imagine it being, at least within my skill set. And there's I don't know if I'm ready to stop doing that because I've only done so many games. I think I'd like to kind of keep this this path for a little bit, just because it's fun to do. I get to be home. I get to do all the things that I want in a game, and it's not team management, and it's
Yeah.
not dealing with maybe someone doesn't turn in their work at all, or maybe there's all sorts of weird things that can go wrong. Aside from that, my first jump into indie work was with another developer, and we made a game that did decently. But then things sort of went south. It did not. It didn't go well. We'll say.
Okay.
I kind of got. Yeah. So I ended up not being a little soured on trying to just work and partner up with essentially random people because you just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it was already a miracle that we completed a game, got it out, and it made some money. That's already insanely difficult. So ultimately, you would think, oh, we should totally stick with that and make this happen again. But yeah, unfortunately, things kind of went south, and it was not a viable option for me anymore. And I decided to do stuff myself, and that's when I started messing around with code. I didn't know how to program yet at that point, so I was just sort of teaching myself to do it. And that's where I sort of started a roll of games with like the subject and Our Secret Below, then Cohate, and then this. So it's something that I still feel like I'm hitting a stride on
Yeah.
and really trying to define what it is that I like to make, want to make, and what I want my contribution to be to the indie horror sphere.
Is that
I
the sort
really,
of way you're going to go now? Do you think you're going to stick along that kind of indie horror path? I mean, you should do
oh,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's obviously something you're very talented at doing. But yeah, I
Oh,
didn't know if you
thank
were going
you.
to completely do a different game next or something else. But
I have other game ideas that aren't horror. They're still in sort of the quirky, weird range. Like I don't know if anyone's familiar with. There's a cartoon called Invader Zim from I guess a million years ago at this point.
yes.
But it's a silly show, but the style of it is just so weird and kind of not creepy, but it's I don't know how to put it. It's very hot topic, I guess. and
Mm, yeah.
um
Yeah, that's one way of
and
putting it. Yeah.
yeah, so I have some ideas that are in those ranges. I have another one that's like a sci-fi game that's completely different, but the things that I really love the most are story-driven games and horror. Like that's what I really like. Um, and so I think it just encompasses the things I like to do and the type of stories I like to tell. So I think I'll probably be staying in this sphere as my core focus for probably ever, but who knows?
Do you have any tips for people who are making a game on their own or want to make a game on their own? Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who are like maybe listening to you and thinking, "Oh, this could really be for me." What kind of advice would you give them?
Um, Stay on it. I know that sounds silly, but motivation is the thing I get asked about the most. It's like, how did you finish a game by yourself? And it's like, well, I've done like five.
Mm.
Um, the the key is just giving yourself small goals. It's actually scheduling, which I think it's not very sexy, so I don't think people want to hear that. But it's basically if you have a game idea, you got to step back and look at the whole thing and break it down into large goals. And then take essentially milestones. And you take those milestones and you break those down into smaller goals. And then you take those goals and you break them down into tasks. And now you have things that you can accomplish. You have goals that you've set for yourself. And you can take any one of those and say, you know what, I'm going to make a door open and close today. And you do that, whether you're learning or it's something you need to model and make, you do that and you trigger the reward center of your brain. You're like, I finished this thing and I can go around in game and it works. And now I feel good and want to do the next thing. And I really think that's the key. I think it's turning anything into consumable portions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where I think it's really easy to get this grandiose idea for a game because that's how it starts. You get this idea for a story. You get this idea of what a game could be, and you don't necessarily even get to the design doc phase yet where you start drilling down, or maybe you do and you end up kind of just being on the surface because it's really easy to stay in those high level awesome ideas. And then after that you go, well, where do I go from here? How do I start? Like, what do I don't know. It's like you've made a sandwich for yourself. It's huge, and you don't
Yeah.
really know how to get around the first quarter of it, right? So it's really important to understand how your game is structured in terms of tasks. Like, yeah, okay, I've got this insane idea, but what does that look like from a creation standpoint? What are the things that it breaks down into so that I can then turn it into something granular and make something that I can march forward to? Because you can't hit a target you don't have, right? So you've got to make sure you build those targets for you to keep hitting consistently, and before you know it, you're at the end of the game. It's not obviously not that simple, but I think it's a good starting point. If I'm to give someone a hey, you're just beginning, here's where you can go, because you can take that mindset and apply it to anything, right?
Yeah.
Like I said before, I didn't know how to program, so I had to teach myself. So instead of just buying a giant C sharp Bible and starting from chapter one,
Yeah.
that doesn't really work for me. What I did was found just snippets of code that did what I wanted. Like, I'm not a tutorial guy. I'm not great with that. where I watch something and then apply it. I kind of need to bang my head against a wall doing it myself until I figure it out. Um, so what I would do is just search for how do you make something move with a button press, right? Just simple stuff. And then I would find code that would describe how you do that. And I would take that and sort of get it working and go, okay, I understand this. And then I'd make my own that was a variant of it to try to do something else, to jump or to run or whatever, or make things open, close, whatever you can think of. And as I tailored those things, I started to understand how that code worked.
Mm.
And I had a small goal of I'm going to make something move with a button press, and I got that done. And from that spawned a million other things that helped me learn because I accomplished that goal, which then led me to the next thing that I wanted to do and to the next and the next before I got to this point now where I can program systems like the Haunt system and stuff like that. It's not pretty. I'm not the best programmer in the world, but it all works. And
That's the
I
main
think
thing.
I think that's yeah, and I think that's what matters. And I think that is the prime thing that I would give to anyone pursuing anything, whether it's wanting to make their own game or learning to 3D model or program or want to try to get into the game industry to do concept artwork or anything like that, is you really, really, really need to turn it into small things and accomplish those small things. I think that's what's going to really motivate you to keep going.
Well, it's very impressive that you didn't know how to program and then you taught yourself through that way. Because yeah, I think
It was
that's
tough.
yeah. I bet, yeah. Elus, I won't keep you too much longer, but just a couple last questions.
Yeah,
Elus Cinia, I think, in the chat, I don't
I
know
got
if I
time. It's
pronounced
fine.
that right, said, sorry if this has been discussed before, but will there be a continuation of the story, either with DLC or a future sequel? Without spoiling too much,
Yes,
I guess.
yes, and also in patches. I actually put out a update on the Steam community hub, just a roadmap post launch thing, and in there I kind of just described what my plans are for Mortuary Assistant. There's bug fixing things like more granular performance control or graphics controls, and trying to make things work better on lower end machines so that people that don't meet um, the recommended specs may still be able to play it. And then from there, there's smaller things like adding a few more bodies and some lore that you can explore and find. And then from that, I have an idea for a Halloween update where I want to give
Ooh.
some more bodies, some more haunting events, and hopefully another ending. That's what I would really like to do. We'll see how well I can coordinate the animations I'll need to do, and voice actors and all that sort of stuff, and writing the scripts because I write all the dialogue myself, and so all that stuff has to be done. But I that's something I would like to do, is at least have another ending out. From there, I'm going to do various modes like the embalming only mode where you don't have any of the spooky stuff. It's just the way I see it working is you do the embalming and you can choose like time of day, setting, stuff like that.
Okay.
That might be like a cheap DLC, simply because the amount of work that might go into it might be pretty hefty,
Yeah.
because the embalming system right now is tied so heavily into the haunt system. I have to rip it out and essentially make a whole new thing. So we'll see where that goes. It may be a patch, it may be a DLC thing. It's really hard to. It's a little muddy right now. And then also just non-story mode.
Mm.
So a mode where you only get the haunting events and go through a night like that without getting any of the story events. Because if you've seen all of them, you may just want to go through it and experience different haunting events or whatever new ones I may have put out or something like that. So those are coming as well. Things like localization and console porting, those are also on the roadmap for the not too distant future. So I do have plans for this. Now, as far as like a sequel, I have ideas for that. Uh, I have not started kicking around anything more than a basic idea, because I'm just focused on making sure the game is as good as possible right now. I don't want to be someone that puts out a game and just lets it sit and just hopes it does well. Like I want to support it and keep giving people a fun experience because I think that's really important. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. There's also a number of other things that are really exciting for me that I can't talk about,
Ooh.
but they're taking up time as well. So that's kind of where all that stuff sits at the moment.
Okay, you made their day there, Elicinia, by saying that you're doing a sequel and loads of DLC. They're very happy about that. I also got asked about VR. Would you ever think about? I'm sure that's a whole other sphere, but have you ever had any
Yes.
thoughts about that? Because it would be terrifying, obviously.
Absolutely. So I've been asked about VR a lot,
Yeah, I
and
bet.
I have a VR set, and I've actually done development for VR. It's a very silly. It was I did it around Christmas time, so I did this Christmas themed game based on the first game that I made, the subject. I wanted it to be another like horrible scientific test thing, so basically, you have this collar on your neck that'll kill you at the end of a countdown, and all these present boxes fall through the ceiling, and you have to match the number on the box with the number on the screen and press the little button on top. And if you do that, it gives you more time.
Oh,
So it's
right.
just a silly little game, but it's my first jump into figuring out how to do VR, and it's not too bad. So I actually would be very interested in doing it. I can't make any promises about like if slash when. It would have to be kind of a side thing.
Mm,
But I have a love for VR stuff. I really have been wanting to make something. So I would be into just doing it as a little side project, sort of love, a little labor of love kind of thing. Um, but I wouldn't want to just do Mortuary Assistant with VR slapped on top. Like
right.
I don't want to have a PC desktop game with some VR stuff thrown in so it works. I would really want it to be something where when you're driving the barbs for the jaw setting, you're actually having to do the motion, and when
Yeah.
you're cutting into the neck, you're actually having to do the cutting, and the aspiration stuff, or excuse me, the trocar stuff
Yeah.
that when you're filling body cavity fluid, doing the motions for that. And I would really like to give an actual VR experience. There are things that I'd probably also have to abbreviate or cut out, like the wheeling the body back and forth is not something that I think would translate well to VR, simply because the best way to move around really is teleporting, and without getting motion sickness, pretty
Mm,
much. At least
yeah.
for me.
Same.
If I move around in VR without actually physically moving, I get like motion sickness like right away. My
Yeah.
brain is just like, what is happening? It doesn't understand. So I would probably want to do something that's a little more it'd have to be a little more gamey, and like it fades to black and a body loads in or something like that. Who knows? I don't know what I would end up doing there. But that is the long way of saying I would be into doing it. Obviously, I have some level of passion for it. So I think it's something I would really like to do. However, I don't want to be like, yeah, absolutely, because then my publisher would be like, hey, you mentioned you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, don't worry. When next tomorrow, it'll be like, Mortuary Assistant Dev says he's definitely doing VR.
Yeah,
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 don't worry.
exactly.
That's
And
not going to happen.
that's that's not something I mind.
No.
But it's also just like the main thing is I think the publisher would just want to know that that's something that I'm doing, so that they
Oh, got a little pause there. Sorry.
one
Okay.
could. Oh no. Okay.
Sorry, I've got
Oh,
you
you're good.
again. I think my internet was dropping a little bit there, but sorry, go ahead. You were just saying about your publisher.
Oh yeah, just that my publisher probably would want to be the first to jump on something that I would want to do next,
Yeah.
and they would also just want to know what I'm doing, so that I have a weekly meeting about Mortuary Assistant and just kind of development as a whole for things. So they would want to know what's going on with that. Really, that'd be it. But it keeps me from wanting to promise anything, also
Yeah.
because, as I was saying earlier, my focus is Mortuary Assistant right now and making it as good as possible. So I don't want to get too in the weeds on anything specific.
I think that's fair enough. You've got a lot going on, let's face it. You've got a lot to do.
There's some stuff, yeah.
I want to ask you finally, just something I noticed in the game, which I enjoyed quite a lot, was one of the corpses was called Tony Pizza. Was that I'm guessing that was from the Reddit story. Are there other kind of fun names? Was that you just having a little joke, deciding to put
So
that in?
so that came from yes, and also just Dread uh, members making all these jokes about it and everything, and they just it was just in the Mortuary Assistant Discord channel in their server. We have a private one, obviously,
Yeah.
for like just development stuff, and they were just joking about it, mentioned offhand. It's like there should totally be a Tony Pizza in Mortuary Assistant. It's one of the names. I was like, all right, so I just went ahead and added that real quick. But there are a number of little silly Easter eggs in the game. Now the names are mainly from patrons because I did a pass on my Patreon twice, I think, before launch, where they just gave me a name and I would put it in the system to be a name chosen at random for the bodies. I have a list of like 200 names and then 100 last names that get cobbled together for bodies. But every now and then there's a chance that it will pull a Patreon name, and some of those are silly as well because they didn't want to use their real name or something
Right.
like that. So those there's that, but there's also mostly silly stuff in like the apartment. If you look around, there's some silly stuff in there on like the cereal boxes and other elements. I like it's weird because a lot of people I think imagine that I would be uh like creepy and weird and just like murdered out in black and everything, just like a goth programmer making these types of games. But I actually enjoy silly humor a whole lot, so I try to throw them in every now and then into the games that I make. So there's also like there's an Easter egg if you stand around listening to the radio for a long time in our apartment, where DJ Two Shades will come on and talk about how it's the one song radio station. It's all they have the budget for, and that's just me doing a silly voice. And there's a few of those the longer you stick around. But there's just stuff like that that's shoved in various places.
Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to that now. I'm gonna have to hear you doing your DJ Two Shades impression. Well,
I'll probably be going back into all my games and adding them now.
yeah, definitely. You'll have to. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time
Yeah,
to have a
yeah,
chat with us.
absolutely.
Really
Yeah,
love the
thank you.
game. Can't wait to see what else you've got in store for it. Really looking forward to the Halloween update, whatever that will be, and the DLC and everything. And yeah, just congrats on releasing it
Thank
and
you.
making a
Thank you.
great game.
Thank you. Hopefully people keep enjoying it. I'll keep making it as long as people want to keep playing it, and
I think
probably
that'll
longer.
be a long time. All right, thank you. So, oh, I should say, I
Thank
will
you.
put this link when I put this on YouTube. I'll put this below. But just for people in the chat at the moment, in terms of you, as you say, you stream. Where can people
Oh yeah,
see
yes,
on your
yeah.
stream?
Um, well, it's just Darkstone Digital, just
Cool,
on Twitch. That's the name, all one. But I haven't streamed since maybe a month before Mortuary Assistant launch. I tend to
fair
do that with
enough.
my games.
Yeah,
I'll hit ending stuff or like story rich stuff and not want to give those things away. So I will end up not streaming it, and I will be coming back sooner than later. But with the game just coming out, and then I had these trips to visit family, and I've got PAX coming up in like 4 days or something, 3 or something now. So I'm flying out to Seattle, which, by the way, if you'll be there, you can come and say hello.
hey,
But yeah, so there's a lot going on there. But once I'm back and things sort of hit their stride again, then I'll absolutely be back to streaming again, and I'll be streaming probably work on the game, just like update stuff or maybe a new prototype for patrons or something like that, where I start toying around with new ideas. That's just kind of what I do on there, and a lot of it is just hanging out, talking with chat about game development and random stuff. It's
that's
kind
really
of
cool.
my break from it's as sad as it sounds, it's sort of my social interaction since I work by
Oh,
myself in this office. So, I look forward to it.
will you be doing any UK conventions? Asks Nikki in chat.
Not that I know
It
of,
is a little
but
bit far away.
yeah, but so like Dread's at Gamescom right now.
Yes, I
So
saw
they're
them
in.
actually. I was at Gamescom. I saw them. They had some interesting game. I was looking out for Mortuary Assistant, but I think they were
Yeah,
showcasing
so
other stuff.
Gamescom was like, nah, with my game. I don't know why. I think maybe at the time when I submitted it, because you have to submit the games that are going to be shown there,
Yeah.
I guess. And at the time that I submitted it, the game was not anywhere near what it is right now. So I think it was just rejected on that merit, not where it's at right now. So Dread did not have it there, which I think is unfortunate, but that's the way it is. But the point is that they do shows at all these different locations. We do go to different trade shows at different places and conventions and stuff. And they are 100% willing to fly me out to those things. And I think they prefer it because they like when the developer's there. There just haven't been that many scenarios yet where that happens. Like I was at PAX East,
Yeah.
and then explained obviously what happened with Gamescom. And now I'm going to PAX West. Who knows what's coming up in the future? There's also going to be, again, this stuff I can't really talk about. There will be future opportunities to meet with people in different locations and stuff like that. So it will happen. Don't know when.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And like you say, you're a very busy guy at the moment, so that's fair enough. But yeah, if anyone is going to PAX, obviously, drop by and say hello. But yeah, I'll leave it there because, as I said, you are a very busy guy. Really appreciate you coming on, and yeah,
Yeah.
really looking forward to what you've got in store.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was great. I always love talking like this. Like I said, I don't have a huge social outlet, so I appreciate it.
No worries at all. We're all going to follow you on Twitch now and hop into your streams.
Excellent. All right. I look forward to seeing all of you.
All right, cheers. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.